If you're struggling to balance LSAT prep while working full-time, this one's for you. I got a question here from Ethan, a finance professional who's struggling with reading comprehension and seeking efficient study methods while balancing it with a busy work schedule. He writes, I'm aiming for a 170 plus on the LSAT in August. Reading comprehension under time constraints is stressful. I also struggle to find the most efficient study methods that fit into my busy work schedule. Any suggestions for improving comprehension and identifying effective study techniques? I'll get to the reading comp timing issues in a moment. I first want to address the balancing LSAT prep with a busy work schedule, because I find that far too many students struggle to maintain their full-time job while studying for the LSAT over a period of several months. This far too often leads to burnout. I was recently working with a student facing a similar challenge, and I encouraged her to try to squeeze in the time where she could. She was waking up the last second before work, hopping on the train, getting to work, working a full-time job, then getting home and trying to motivate herself to study her LSAT books when Netflix and the refrigerator seemed far more tempting. I encouraged her instead to shift her sleep schedule so that she would wake up a little bit earlier. She could get to the work area early. She could study for work in a conference room at her office. She was a paralegal at a law firm, so she could find an empty conference space, getting there at 7:30, 8 a.m. before all the attorneys rolled in at 9:15, 9:30. That's one approach that, Ethan, that you might take. Get to work early, study in the vicinity of work, either at a coffee shop around the corner or in your office if you can. Then you can squeeze in a little bit more time during lunch. If you can study in the office again, great. If not, leave the office, find a coffee shop, a library, a Starbucks, a restaurant, whatever, where you can cram in some LSAT study time. If your employer doesn't know that you're studying for the LSAT, obviously don't do this in the immediate vicinity of your office or in your office either. Then, before you leave to go home, I would recommend that you study in the vicinity of work or in your office if you can, because once you get home, all the distractions of Netflix, the refrigerator, roommates, family, friends, all become far too distracting. And as a result, the LSAT study time actually ends up just not happening. Since you're taking the LSAT in August, I'm also wondering if maybe your work schedule might get a little bit lighter over the summer. A lot of folks who are studying for the LSAT don't tell their employees they're studying. If you can, that's great. Maybe they can reduce your workload a little bit and they'll support you in your LSAT prep journey. If so, great. If not, not a whole lot you can do. I do know some students who are fortunate enough to be able to study for the LSAT full time. They've got, of course, family or a spouse in many cases supporting them financially to allow them to do that. But of course, that's going to be a significant benefit to you if you are in that situation. Regardless, if you can't, if you have to keep working, that's of course totally fine. You still have several months between now and August to boost your score significantly to that 170 plus mark. Now, you mentioned also reading comprehension under time constraints is stressful. I totally hear you on that. You also mentioned struggling with comprehension, looking for more effective study techniques. My first question is, can you solve LSAT reading comp accurately without the time constraints? If you can maintain high accuracy without the time constraint, that suggests to me that it's not really about comprehension, but rather about speed. So we have to disentangle the two. Can you get high accuracy without the time constraint? If so, fantastic. Then we move on to more pacing related strategies, like we approach the questions in a strategic order of approach, which I'll share more on in a moment. Or maybe we think about how to allocate your time between the passage text and the questions. On the other hand, if you are not getting them right, even when you have significantly more time, let's say you gave yourself double time or triple time or unlimited time, if you still can't get it right, then of course we have to go back to the basics. One technique I might recommend for you is to take a given LSAT reading comp passage, doesn't matter which one it is, and rewrite the entire thing in simpler language. If you can, fantastic. That removes vocabulary and convoluted sentence structures as a factor, and then you can prove to yourself, hey, I was able to understand this content after all. It's not so bad once I make it more real world relatable. Now, if your comprehension is good, fantastic, we move on to the pacing strategies, like approaching the questions out of order. Rather than doing the questions in the order given, you can strategically approach them in a specific order that will layer and build your understanding as you go. So you might try approaching the general global questions first, like main idea, primary purpose, passage organization, best title, tone, author's opinion, and such. Then move on to the more detail-oriented local questions that would have line references in the old paper versions of the LSAT. And finally, the more inferential questions that require a bit more reading between the lines. Anyway, folks, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to see it. I don't do any advertising for this channel. I rely only on word of mouth to help get the word out, and your spreading the word really does make a difference. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.